deer women are a black-tailed deer that transform into women. And it depends, these are things that only men see. And it depends on the man. How this deer is going to appear, it all depends upon the man. What these deer usually do is when they come near a man, they can sense something about that man, and they can kind of read the thoughts of the man. And us guys, hey, if you're a guy, admit it. You have a fantasy woman. Even if you have a girlfriend right now, admit it. You do have a fantasy woman. That was something you were influenced even before you met the woman that you're with now. Yeah, we're all this way. If you're not, there's something wrong. Yeah, or you're a gay guy and there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe for you it's a guy. Yeah, I'm not saying that's wrong. But we do have a fantasy. Maybe women do this too. I don't know. I'm not a woman, so I don't know. But I'm not going to tell you what mine is. Anyway, when a man encounters one of these deer women, this thing is going to appear as it's going to appear as a woman based on his thoughts. So sometimes, for some men that see this, it might appear as someone they know, because maybe it is somebody they know. Maybe they're secretly in love with somebody they know, but the other person just doesn't know, that doesn't like them or whatever, for whatever reason. But they're just really, really pretty, and they just really it secretly desire and pine for this woman. So that's what this deer is going to appear as that woman. So that deer, they don't talk, for one thing. Remember, these are deer, okay? So when they appear as this fantasy woman, they're not going to speak, they're not going to say anything. And even when you look at them in the eyes, it seems to be like they're looking right through you, like you're not even there. And most of the time, most of these stories, their arms are always straight down, and in the older stories, they lure men into further and further away from their camp, into a secret place, like maybe a valley someplace, or where there's a lot of trees, and then as she stands there, and she's so beautiful. Yeah, so usually the stories go that men slowly get the courage to go up to her and actually touch her, as she doesn't do anything. So he gets more brave about it, more up to the challenge or whatever, and he starts to feel her. Yeah, maybe he touches her breasts or whatever. Then he starts to slowly undress her. She doesn't do anything. She's just standing there. Yeah, so he'll get to the point of taking all her clothes off, and then he starts to have sex with her. And as he's having sex with her, before he reaches orgasm, she turns back into the deer, and then he sees that and he freaks out, and usually something happens to his mind at this time. And so the stories, they say that he has to go to a inipi, a sweat lodge ceremony, many times, and he has to cleanse himself from this energy. And usually during this, after this ceremony, he vomits. He vomits a lot of yellow fluid, and it's the unhealthiness, and he has to do this a lot until it's all gone. But usually, when it's over, when he's got it all out of his system, he's never the same. Yeah, he's because of the mind. Yeah, he's still kind of messed up in the mind, and so he, if he was a good hunter before, suddenly he's lost his hunting skills. He's really insecure. He's really unsure of himself, and it's like he's damaged mentally. Yeah, there's something really wrong, and they usually become sickly after this. Yeah, so that's the basic foundation of these stories. They're very vicious. Yeah, and it shows you the dangers of when men do things that are when they're controlled by their physical desires only, without they only use their mind in things like I wonder you know I wonder when she'll let me take her clothes off, or I wonder things like that. It's all being focused on the exterior, and this is why a lot of people say that guys, men's brains are in their penises, yeah? And I'm sure for a lot of guys that seems to appear to be the situation. Hence these deer woman stories. Different tribes have a little bit different takes on it, but generally the underlying theme is the same. It's men who allow themselves to be controlled by their lust rather than their mind and heart, and they end up in very hazardous situations. Yeah, and but some of them, like this, people still talk of these today. For those of you who are Lakota, if you hadn't heard a deer woman story, go find an old person in your family, because I guarantee you, every family has a deer woman story, at least one. I've heard several from various people in my life, and all of them I know personally. Yeah, I mean, the people who've told me these stories, I know them personally. These stories didn't happen to them; it happened to their relatives. Yeah, one of them happened to one of my relatives. He was an uncle of mine that this happened to, and I'll give you an example of the kind of stories you hear, the modern versions, which are, it's the same underlying thought. Yeah, but see, we know these stories. We know what can happen and stuff. So today, when people experience this kind of thing, the older people, they know this stuff. Yeah, so they know that as soon as they encounter something like this, they know to get away. Yeah, to get away right away, so that it goes away eventually. So anyway, I'll give you an example. One of them, this happened on the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation back in the 1930s, probably around that time. And during this time period, America made a law that said it cut up the reservation into little parcels of land, about 160 acres each. And every family got a parcel of land, and the government put up a log cabin and a couple of horses, a wagon, and a cow, some chickens. And they were told to be farmers. Yeah, they got farm implements and stuff like that, seeds, and they got rations, food rations, really unhealthy food. So people lived apart from each other. They weren't together like in a camp anymore. They were separated from each other. So that community way of thinking was torn apart now. Families were now forced to think only of their children and wife. The Teoshpai system was taking a beating now, the extended family. Extended family, geez, let me explain that so you know what that is. Your mother and her sisters are all your mothers. The husbands of all these women are your fathers, and all the children from these people are your brothers and sisters. Your mother's brothers are your uncles. Their wives are your aunties, and their children are your cousins. Okay? That's your mom's side. On your father's side, remember your father is your father, so that means all his brothers are your other fathers. And all the children from those marriages are your other brothers and sisters. Your father's sisters are your aunties, and all their husbands are your uncles. And those children from those marriages are all your cousins. This is how Teoshpai works. So they lived in a camp circle, yeah. And so when this law came out in the 1900s, where families now had to separate from each other, so that really broke the community way of thinking. Okay, but so this is what happened. So you went to the reservation in those days. You see these log cabins dotted here and there, and they didn't see each other anymore. I mean, for days. So in this one story, this man and woman, they just got married, and they got a parcel of land, and they got log cabin. They just had basics, cast iron, frying pan, old wooden stove, and just the log cabins in those days, they had dirt floor. Yeah, they didn't have wooden floors, and just a one-room thing. So the bathroom would be outside someplace, designated area, maybe an outhouse or something like that. Some of the log cabins were equipped with doors, and this man was outside working, trying to put up a chicken coop, and his wife was inside making the evening meals. He was going to make some kind of soup. So here it started to rain, so he came inside and just left the door open because it really smells good, when it's raining. The ground really smells good, and it was nice to hear the rain. So he left the door open. And here he was just, doing whatever, inside the log cabin. Him and his wife were talking, and here all of a sudden there was a woman standing in the doorway. Just out of nowhere, she just appeared there. And in those days, it was, you could, every now and then, you would still see somebody dressing the old way, of leather dresses, leather pants, shirts, how our 1800s look. Every now and then you would still see somebody like that. Not everybody dressed modern, okay, in those times. So this woman was standing there, and she had a leather dress, a buckskin dress. She was just standing there. And so the man didn't recognize her, so he said, "Why don't you come in? Come in out of the rain." He said, "Come in and you can have some soup with us." This lady didn't even say anything. She just stood there. So the man slowly walked over to his wife, and he said, "There's somebody strange in the doorway." So the woman looked over there, and she said, "I don't recognize you." So she said, "Who are you?" She said. The woman in the door didn't say anything. So the man said, "Oh no, okay. We have to get out of here," he said. He said, "Go towards the window and climb out the window." And the woman said, "Are you crazy?" And the man said, "Yeah, just do what I tell you to do." So she said, "Okay." So they slowly, went towards the one of the windows, and they didn't have glass. Yeah, and so the woman crawled out, and as the man was getting out, this woman ran inside the house, and the man and woman ran up. There was a hill behind their house, so they ran up there, and the man said, "Get on the tree." He said, "Get up on the tree." So she climbed up there, and he did too, because he knew this was a deer woman. Yeah, and you could hear smashing, and boy, somebody was raising hell inside that log cabin. Things were crashing all over the place, and after a while, it was quiet, and then this woman came out, and she was running the other way, yeah, the other side. Her arms were straight down, but her legs were really moving fast. And then about a few seconds after they saw her, she turned into a black-tailed deer, took off. So the wife was like really scared, yeah. They'd never seen anything like this, and the guy said, "Okay, we have to burn some sage. Yeah? This is dangerous." So they went inside their cabin, and everything was thrown all over the place. Yeah? The soup was on the floor, and he said, "Don't worry." He said, "It's okay." So he said, I'll find something for us to eat." He said, "Maybe there's a rabbit or something like that, because rabbit meat is good medicine. Yeah, it makes you feel good." So he wanted his wife to not feel scared, so he went looking for a jackrabbit, and he found one. So he cooked it outside. Yeah, so then they had a nice meal and kept the fire going, and it never came back, but that was one that happened, yeah, back in the early 1900s. So they didn't know who this was, but the story spread fast that this couple experienced one. And this one, people were thinking that it came to tempt this man, yeah, because she was really, really pretty. When he described the way she looked, nobody knew who she was, yeah, and then people were saying, that's probably, his fantasy woman, yeah, what he thinks is a pretty woman. That's what she appeared as. So he was being real friendly, yeah, till he realized what it was. So that happened in the daytime, yeah. This is crazy, and there's many like this, yeah. There's ones where two guys were again. This is on Cheyenne River. There's two men where they were spent the week out in the country. They have a house. One of them had a house out in the country, and him and his friend were out there, and they were working local ranches, helping out, yeah. And then they got paid, so they decided to come up to Dupree, where the town where I've come from. They decided to come up there and get drunk and have some beers and then drive back there, yeah. So they were driving up, and here they saw these two women walking on the road, and it's evening time. So he thought, these women are gonna. It's dangerous out here. There might be coyotes, yeah, something. So they pulled over to the car, and they asked these women, "Do you want to ride to town?" And they didn't say anything. And they're both white women, yeah, and they just stood there, and they opened the doors, the back seat doors, and so they got in. They didn't say anything though, yeah. These women, they were carrying big handbags. They didn't say anything. Long dresses and stuff like that, and then they wearing real tall hats, yeah, women hats. It looked like they were not from that time period, yeah. They're talking 1950s here. So the clothes they're wearing are very out of place, almost Victorian-like. Interesting that they were white women, yeah. And so they started to drive in, and the guys were saying, "So where are you guys from?" Because see, in those days it was the Depression, yeah, in America. It's a really hard time. So you would see gypsies driving through the area. Sometimes they follow the river. Yeah, they just out in the country. They just follow the river and camp wherever and fish, and they continue going like that. So you saw that from time to time, or really poor white people that maybe they lost their farms, yeah, and so they have no car, they don't know where to go, so they just follow a river and just live like that, out in nature. So it wasn't out of the ordinary to see white people out there in the middle of nowhere back then. So that's why they thought maybe these ladies came from a group like that. So what they didn't see this as strange, yeah. The ladies never answered their questions, where they're from, what's their name, and they never said anything. They looked just straight ahead. And here, one of them started kicking the seat, and those two guys looked at each other and basically said, "Oh shit!" So they pulled the car over and they opened the back doors, yeah. And here these ladies ran out of the car and they started running, yeah, started running down the road. They're carrying their bags and their hands were straight down, but their legs were moving 100 miles an hour. Yeah, they run into a ditch. They jumped over the fence that farmers put up. Yeah? They're kind of tall fences too, and here they jumped over that fence like nothing. And they showed the headlights. They were following them, yeah. And they a few seconds after they jumped over that fence, two black-tailed deer were heading out. So they got back into their car and sped like hell back to into town, and they found some relatives, and they talked to them, and they said what happened. They said, "Geez, you guys better not go back tonight." So they burned sage for them and sang songs for them, so they to get that energy out, and see, because they have that knowledge. Yeah, they knew that this kind of thing happens. So if you're a man, it's not a good idea to be driving around late at night. So that's just a couple stories. Yeah, there's a whole bunch like this, and a lot of times they're kind of scary. Yeah. So but like I said, the older stories, they talk about when the guys fall for them and they end up having sex with them, and then it turns out they're deer, and then they go crazy after that. They're never the same. Yeah. And it just goes to show you, that when you're a man and all you look at women as sex objects, and you think that the only reason why women are here is to have sex, that you will lose your mind, yeah, and that nobody's going to want to be with you, and your life is not going to be healthy, and you will become physically sick because of this. So this is why, in long time ago, before reservation time, when boys are coming of age, they're taught about the sanctity of, life, and how the women are the life givers, and that. But we still play a role, yeah. Women can't have babies on their own. You see what I mean? So we don't place women above men, because that would be dualistic. And we are taught about the sacredness that's happening, inside of them when they're a baby's forming, and what that means for us, that for being a father and a good husband, yeah, and providing for our families, and helping our children to become emotionally developed as well. Yeah, and that we see that is what's important, and sex is very important, and it's very important that you're physically attracted to your companion. Yeah, that all of that's important. But as soon as we just think only of sex and physical attraction, that's the purpose of the Dear Woman stories. Yeah, that when we just focus on physical attraction and sex, then we are going unhealthy. And as we go unhealthy, we become dualistic and we become oppressive. Yeah, so that when we are with a woman, we might even have kids with that woman, but we're looking for other opportunities because we want sex. See, we're placing sex as the most important thing, and that ruins lives, including the men's lives who do this. Yeah, so it's really important that when you're falling in love, or not falling in love, when you see somebody and they're really attractive physically, that you take time to get to know them. Yeah. If they are a good woman, if this pretty woman is really a good woman, and she sees that you want to get to know her, and she says, okay, I want to get to know you too. So it's a complimenting thing, yeah, reciprocal thing. So that has a good chance. But if the woman looks at him and says, shit, he's not that good looking, and then she'll say, nah, I don't think so. And then the man should stop. Yeah, no is no. And even if she might be a good woman, but she's just not attracted to him. Yeah, and so she just let it go and go do something else. Yeah, but a lot of times she's unhealthy. She's vain. She knows she's good looking, and so she wants to use that to her advantage, and only go out with who she thinks are good looking guys. And she has the same intention too. She only wants sex. She's the Dear Woman. See what I mean? So you have to look at both sides of the story, what happens to the victims and also the Dear Women themselves. You have to look at the whole thing. And then you see like attracts like. When men fall for these kind of women, it's going to go to their doom. Yeah? But it's like attracts like. See? And if it's a good woman and she's healthy and she says, okay, yeah, I'd like to see if you're a good guy too. See? Then now you have a like attracts like there too. Long time ago, among the Dakota people, there's a story of this woman. Dakota people are our relatives, and we speak the same language, but theirs is with the D. So they're called the D dialect, yeah, the Dakota dialect. So when we say words that have L, like lila, which means really or very, the Dakota people say dida. See the difference? But it's still we still can understand each other, no problem. So we consider ourselves the same nation, yeah. Okay, and among the Dakota people, there is a story of this girl. She becomes a young woman, and the young guys in the camp, they all want to win her hand. They all want to marry her. So they follow her around all day. The guys are all having contests. See who can run the fastest. See who can throw a spear the farthest. Things like that. And they keep asking, to marry her. And she keeps turning everybody down. And so finally she says, okay, she says, we're going to go to this lake. And she says, whoever throws the rock the farthest, that's the man I'm going to marry, she said. So they all start throwing rocks way out there. And she keeps turning them down. She keeps saying, nope, nope, it's not far enough. It's not far enough. They do that all day and their arms are getting really tired. And then doing that all day long, a small island formed out there. Yeah, but the water's deep. So it shows you how many rocks they were throwing and how frequent. So finally the guys realize she's playing them. That she's not going to choose anybody. She's just having fun. She's taking advantage of her looks, and she's making guys do anything for her. She doesn't intend to marry anybody. They realize that, so they circle her. And then one guy pushes her on the ground, and then as she's laying on the ground, they tie her up. They put her in a canoe, and they take her out to those rocks where they threw out there, because it made a small island. Yeah, they take her out there, and she's still tied up, and they just leave her out there. I said, "This is where you belong." They said, "You don't want to marry nobody, or you want to marry nobody? Now you're going to get your wish. Now you're going to marry nobody." Then they leave her out there. Then they take off, and she's tied up, huh? And nobody hears her scream or anything. So she ends up dying. So this one is supposed to teach about vanity. That when you only focus on your outside looks, yeah, and you use that to your advantage, so you get people to do things for you, you are going to mess your life up too. And when you play with people's emotions, it's going to lead to your death. Whether that's literally or figuratively or both, it follows that natural law of generosity, that what you send out comes back to you stronger. So people who are vain, they just want to use others for selfish purposes. They're sending out unhealthy energy that's going to come back to them 4 times as strong. So see, all these stories are all focusing on the outside. People focusing only on their physical appearance. And that's going to lead to craziness. Gnashkia, that's what they call it. That means it's hollow on the inside. They focus so much on their physical appearance that their inside erodes away, because they're not taking care of it. They're not taking care of their emotional or spiritual or mental self, so that erodes, and it just ends up empty inside. So they're because all their focus is on their physical appearance, and they go crazy. That's called Ganashkia, and that's one of our words for crazy, is Ganashkia. This kind of crazy is the mean kind, the bad kind. Yeah, this is not the funny guy kind of crazy. This is the really mean kind, the liar kind. Think about the 4 parts of yourself and do your best to take care of it, so you don't just focus on the physical appearance, but you focus on inside too. Your reality begins within. Yeah, that's your sacred centers. Your reality begins within. And it is important to be physically attracted to somebody, but you have to take the time to get to know them too, so that they know you value their inner world, and they will value your inner world too, because like attracts like. Okay? Everything is a circle, so we come back again. This is why there's no word for goodbye in the Lakota language. Instead, we say something like until next time, which in our language is Doksha Ake.